Welcome back to 340 Paddler, and today we're dealing with the unfortunate event of a capsize. Now, hopefully this never happens to you, but it has in the past. We had a father and son team in a canoe that flipped about 2 years ago. One ended up on one bank, one ended up on the other. The canoe was separate from them. Neither of them knew whether each other was okay. We don't want that to happen to you. So let's look at some scenarios and let's look at what you can do and what your priorities should be if you find yourself in the water. Now, there are certain times in the race when this is more likely. There are actually 3 of them. First, at the start. So what's going to happen is I'm going to awkwardly bring up the pen tool, and then as you hit the confluence, you have people in short boats who are fairly slow, who are getting pushed over here, pushed over this way as they hit the Missouri. You have fast boats that are trying to get through that, and you end up with a mess somewhere about here. You want to avoid that. You can go far river left to avoid it. I would not do far river right because there's actually a sandbar right about here. Some of these people are over it in this given year. That will slow you down, and there's a sewerage outlet up here that would be a problem too. But what happens is people get sideways, people miss paddle strokes. There's a lot of things that'll happen, and suddenly you find yourself tipped over. If you do, you will naturally go towards this shore, which is fine because there are usually rescue boats sitting out here waiting, watching, and from here your ground crew can see that there was a problem, and you can always call them and have them meet you at La Bonnie or Riverfront Park. Riverfront is 5 miles down, La Bonnie is 15 miles down, and get anything that you need. Now, we also could have a sinking at night. Sorry, wrong slide. You could also sink at night. Now, what's likely to happen here is you fall asleep and fall in the water, or suddenly your core gives out because you're in too narrow of a boat and you find yourself in the water. Either way, it is a problem. Now, if you sink at night, your first priority is to stay with the boat. Do not leave the boat. Grab the boat. Throw an arm over the boat. As you're falling out, grab onto the edge, whatever you can do to hold on to the boat. Because finding your head, which looks like a dirty, slightly shrunken basketball at this point, really is going to be difficult. Whereas finding an 18-foot boat or 15-foot or whatever is going to be a lot easier. So stay with your boat if this happens. And it has happened in the past. If you do need to get out of your boat, make sure you have your PFD on you. That's why you should never, ever take it off. Make sure that you have some kind of lighting on you. And this is why you should make sure that your cell phone is actually attached to your person, not to the boat. Because if you do fall out when you get to shore, you can call for help. Then there's the issue of traumatic sinking, say on a rock, attached to a wing dike, on a perfectly sunny morning pulling into Cooper's Landing. I wouldn't know this experience. That definitely wouldn't be my hand, my tape measure, or my boat, but in 2016 it happened to me. If this happens, you're going, okay, maybe not quite to this level, but if you traumatically sink the boat, first priority is to get yourself and hopefully the boat to shore. Most boats these days, if you punch a hole in it, it will still float. Because they have bulkheads, they have sealed off compartments. They may not float well, but it's going to float. Take advantage of that, not just to be seen, but also to help you get to shore, because especially in the middle of the night or something, you really want that extra help. So, definitely something to think about. So, what do you do if you find yourself in the water? First, stay with the boat. As I said, it's much easier to find a capsized boat than it is to find you, because all that's going to be above the water is your head. It doesn't really matter how bright your PFD is. In the middle of the night, we're not going to see it. So stay with the boat if at all possible. Obviously, if the boat is going to the bottom, please let it go to the bottom. Do not pull a Titanic. You are not Jack. He didn't survive a beautiful icy death. Second, grab the paddle. If you have the opportunity to get back in the boat, or you get to shore and you can get back in the boat, you're not going very far if you don't have a paddle. So try and grab the paddle. At least in my case, if I capsize, I usually hold on to the paddle. It's not something that I've had to work on or anything like that. It's just sort of instinct to always have that paddle in hand. And the other hand usually goes to grab the boat. But make sure that you grab the paddle. The paddle will also give you, in many cases, a little bit of flotation because usually they're hollow. Finally, do not worry about the stuff. You will have a 2 a.m. rummage sale. And I have seen it happen to a lot of people. Don't worry about the stuff that goes downstream, the stuff that you lose. Hopefully, you have everything tied down or attached to the boat in such a way that it's a big mess, but you're not losing anything, or it's attached to your person. The only things that I ever have that aren't attached to my boat is whatever active food bag I'm eating from at the time. Everything else, from water and hydration to my cell phone to my GPS, etc., is attached to either me or the boat. And it's all tied down. Seats are another important one. Make sure that they're attached to the boat so that it doesn't go away. But if it does, something goes floating, don't worry about it. It's just stuff. You can buy more stuff. That's why Jeff Bezos was born. And finally, head for shore. Grab the boat, head for shore. Especially if you're on day 2, night 2, do not try and drain the boat in the middle of the river and all of that. It's not going to work. You will find that you have lost an awful lot of coordination. So it's a lot easier to get to shore and then worry about draining the boat, calling your ground crew, figuring out where you are, and everything else. Speaking of which, if you're using a GPS for the race, I recommend resetting it at every checkpoint. The reason is, it's really easy if you have to call the safety boat to say, hey, I'm 12 miles downriver from Waverley, or I'm 12.5 miles downriver from Glasgow. They will be able to pinpoint your location if you haven't been keeping track of which river mile you're at. Now, once you get to shore, that's when you can either relaunch or call for help. Hopefully you have the safety card. You should put the safety card at the back of the dry bag that you have your phone in so that it's right there. This is not the current safety card, which is why it says 2014 on it. But you will get one of these when you register for the race. Make sure you have it on you, and you can either call for help or relaunch as necessary. Now, if you call for help and they come and pick you up, you are done. So be aware of that. But in some cases, you might be hypothermic, you might have other issues going on that caused you to capsize in the first place. It might be the best decision you can make. Ultimately, we're just trying to get you to that tropical paradise, which is the finish line. So, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, quarrels, qualms, quandaries, curse words, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.